A luta continua. A luta continua.
Considered a charismatic and thoughtful leader, Samora Machel was a military commander and the revered first post-colonial president of Mozambique upon independence in 1975. Samora Machel was faced with the unenviable task of building his country during a civil war. This war was between Samora Machel's Frelimo and the Rhodesian and apartheid regime-sponsored Renamo. In this episode of African Biographics, we look at the life and legacy of Samora Machel and also a brief explanation of the Mozambican Civil War. Samora Machel was born in 1933 and was raised in the village of Chilembene in Mozambique. Machel's parents were forced to grow cotton by the Portuguese, and in the 1950s their farmland was taken and given to Portuguese settlers. In order to avoid starvation, his relatives went to work in the South African mines under repressive and dangerous conditions. Soon after, his brother was killed in a mining accident. In the latter years, Samora would attribute the radical political stance that he developed not only from reading the works of Karl Marx but also from the experiences of his family. Samora Machel attended a Catholic mission school for his primary education, and by 1954 he had started studying in the capital city of Maputo to become a nurse, one of the few occupations open to black Mozambicans at the time. Samora began his political activities in a hospital where he protested that the black nurses were paid less than the whites who were doing the same job. He later told a reporter how bad medical treatment was for Mozambique's poor by saying, "The rich man's dog gets more in the way of vaccination, medicine and medical care than do the workers upon whom the rich man's wealth is built." After 10 years as a nurse, Machel joined the Front for the Liberation of Mozambique, or Frelimo as it was called by most. Frelimo was dedicated to creating an independent Mozambique, so Samora Machel joined Frelimo in 1962. Soon after joining the organization, he was sent to Algeria for military training. In 1964, he returned to Mozambique and led Frelimo's first guerrilla attack against the Portuguese in northern Mozambique. Samora Machel spent most of his time in the field with his men, leading them in combat and sharing their dangers and hardships. His qualities as a tough soldier and a persuasive speaker won him favor among his fellow comrades. Samora also enjoyed the confidence of respect of Frelimo's president, Eduardo Mondlane. He would rise quickly through the leadership ranks and became Frelimo's leader in 1970 after the 1969 assassination of Eduardo Mondlane. The Frelimo Revolutionary Army weakened Portugal, and after the 1974 coup in Portugal, the Portuguese were forced to leave Mozambique. The new revolutionary government led by Samora Machel took over on the 25th of June 1975. Samora Machel would become the first president of post-colonial Mozambique. Faced with the task of transforming the now post-colonial Mozambique, Machel attempted to recast the nation according to his Marxist-Leninist beliefs, and as such began the nationalization and socialization of the country's wealth and resources. The high watermark of Mozambican Marxism was in the early 1980s under the single-party rule of Frelimo. At the Frelimo Fourth Congress in 1983, the core went out to defend the fatherland, overcome underdevelopment, and build socialism. The national anthem of the time promised to make Mozambique the grave of capitalism and exploitation. Frelimo's own anthem described party members as soldiers of the people marching forward in the struggle against the bourgeoisie. Samora Machel's government set up schools and hospitals for the country's peasants. A reason why he is seen as an icon on the African continent was the fact that he allowed organizations fighting white colonial rule in South Africa and Zimbabwe to operate from Mozambique. It is important to note that Samora himself never sought to get rich off his position, opting for a minimal salary and never exploiting the perks of power. This endeared him to the public. However, Machel also made errors in his presidency which plunged the country into an economic crisis. Even though his social programs of free education and nationalized healthcare helped Mozambicans, by 1976 the country was burdened with a sinking economy. Machel tried to rescue the economy by limiting imports and instituting rationing. His efforts were not enough, however. Furthermore, he enacted a strict one-party system and tolerated no criticism from opponents. His charisma and personal style kept his government in power despite the droughts and floods of the early 1980s and the ongoing civil war with Renamo. Now is the perfect time to segue into a brief explanation of the Mozambican Civil War. As I mentioned earlier, Samora Machel supported and allowed revolutionaries fighting white minority regimes in Rhodesia, present-day Zimbabwe, and South Africa to operate within Mozambique. Soon after Mozambique's independence, both of these countries attacked Mozambique with an anti-Frelimo organization called Renamo. Renamo was formed in 1976 by white Rhodesian officers who were seeking a way to keep newly independent Mozambique from supporting the black guerrillas such as Robert Mugabe's Zanla forces that were trying to overthrow the white Rhodesian government. These Renamo officers recruited disaffected guerrillas who had belonged to Mozambique's Frelimo. Once Rhodesia gained independence and became Zimbabwe, the sponsorship of Renamo was soon taken over by the South African Armed Forces. Renamo's activities included the killing of the Mozambican people, the destruction of schools and hospitals built by Frelimo, and the blowing up of railway lines and hydroelectric facilities. The Mozambique economy was strangled by these depredations and began to depend on overseas aid, in particular from the Soviet Union. This war was a headache to Samora Machel, who was trying to build the young country. By the late 1980s, Renamo's insurgency had caused at least 100,000 deaths and the creation of more than 1 million refugees. Mozambique's economy was brought to a standstill, and the government was unable to keep the country's railroad network functioning without the help of troops from Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Tanzania. In order to alleviate the impact of this war, Samora Machel signed the Nkomati Accord with the South African apartheid regime in 1984, under which each country agreed not to support the other country's opposition movements, and thereby Mozambique maintained an economic relationship with the white minority government that was battling the African National Congress, the ANC. Samora signed this accord hoping to alleviate the combination of economic and military pressure, which was increasingly undermining the viability of the Mozambican economy. However, even after signing this agreement, these two parties would remain suspicious of each other, and this would explain some of the conspiracies about Samora's death in 1986. We will touch on this later. Though Samora Machel honored this Nkomati Accord, South Africa's PW Botha did not, and the fighting continued. By 1986, Machel was spending 42% of his national income to protect his people from Renamo. Eventually, Frelimo and Renamo signed a peace agreement which was signed in 1992, and Renamo participated in multi-party elections after 1994. In 1986, Samora Machel was returning to Mozambique from Zambia when his plane crashed in South Africa. He had a meeting scheduled for the following morning at which he intended to reshuffle the leadership of the armed forces. Machel thus overrode the instruction from the security ministry that the president should not travel at night, with fatal consequences. His plane never reached Maputo. That night, it crashed into a hillside at Mbuzini just inside South Africa. Machel and 33 others died. 9 people sitting at the back of the plane survived. The news of his untimely death broke on the 20th of October 1986 and sent shockwaves throughout the world. It was believed by many that the South African government was somehow responsible for the crash, although it strongly denied a connection. Throughout Southern Africa, angry people mourned the loss of Samora Machel. In South Africa, protesters blamed their government for Machel's death, while in Zimbabwe, thousands of youth stormed through downtown Harare. The crash remains a mystery, with others simply blaming it on bad weather and others still believing in South Africa's guilt. Machel's widow, Graça, who married South African President Nelson Mandela in 1998, gave evidence to South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission that supported the involvement of the minority South African government in this plane crash. A memorial to Samora Machel was erected in 1999 at the site of the crash. Samora Machel will forever be remembered across the continent for inspiring other nations that breaking the shackles of colonial oppression was achievable. To honor his legacy, there is a large street in downtown Dar es Salaam, the de facto capital of Tanzania, called Samora Avenue. One of the largest streets in Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe, was named Samora Machel Avenue after independence in a gesture of gratitude for Samora Machel's support for black liberation activities before majority rule. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on Samora Machel's legacy. If you're new here, don't be shy to subscribe and to click the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new uploads. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Tatenda for African Biographics. Until next time, cheers. Have a good one.